All right, and to discuss this with us, we're now being joined by Mark Matthews from Singapore. He is Managing Director at Bank Julius Baer & Co., as well as a prominent Asian markets expert. Thank you so much for joining us on WION. It's a pleasure to have you back on the show with us. Let me get right into this. What is your assessment of these reciprocal tariffs as well as the base 10% tariff? Do you see this as a global tariff war or a trade meltdown?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. The important thing is they've decided to separate these two components. So there is a 10% baseline, but then, as you say, there's another reciprocal tariff, which is, we know the equation, people figured it out. It's half the trade deficit a country has with the United States divided by the US imports from that country. And so I think the importance of that is the 10% baseline, that won't come down, but the fact they've divided these two means the reciprocal part definitely will be negotiated down unless countries choose to escalate into a trade war. Now, some countries may do that, but I don't see most countries doing it. I mean, the country that would have been most liable to do it would have been Canada, because they're all patriotic now that Donald Trump's been calling them a 51st state. But Canada wasn't part of these new reciprocal tariffs. And so a country like India, for example, unless the population was demanding of Prime Minister Modi, you must retaliate because we're mortally offended, our pride has been hurt, then the Indian government can sit down with the United States and negotiate and do a deal and bring down these tariffs. So I think that it is premature to say that, this is going to plunge us into a global recession. In fact, the way the Indian stock markets have been trading today shows that they understand this, because they're down less than 1%, and even China is only down about 1.5%.
Right now, that does seem to be the theme here. That appears to be the aim, that perhaps countries will renegotiate their tariffs as well. We were speaking to experts earlier as well. And we also heard a statement from the US government saying that, you really should let this sink in and not retaliate. But however, that doesn't appear to be the case for all. China, of course, we know, did say that it would retaliate. That being said, how do you see the consequences and the fallout of this? As you mentioned as well, India is involved and there are a lot of emerging economies. How do you think they will respond to this?
I think if they're smart, they won't escalate. I mean, countries have to say something, otherwise they'll look weak. But countries that actually respond with slapping on even higher tariffs than they currently have on US imports, that would be illogical in my view. So I think what China's done so far isn't to increase their own tariffs. They're saying, well, they won't allow any more Chinese investment into the United States, which I don't think that's a big game changer, frankly. So, yeah, I think this will not cause a global recession or even an American recession, because the weighted average of these tariffs is 18%, which sounds high, but with product exclusions, because there's many product exclusions like aluminum and steel and automotive, actually the weighted average tariff goes down to 13%. And I don't think a 13% tariff on imported goods is on its own enough to cause a recession in the United States. Now, if the sentiment deteriorates because of all the noise that's created around this, then it could become a self-fulfilling thing. So that we have to watch closely. But on their own, 13% tariffs on imported goods, I don't see as enough to cause a recession. And by the way, let me just say that imported consumer products are a very small part of the personal expenditures in America. It's only around 5%. Now, where it hurts America is the manufacturers, because the manufacturers do import a lot of intermediate products like steel and semiconductors and whatnot, but there have been exemptions on those. And manufacturing anyway is only about 15% of US GDP, whereas consumption is 70. So I mean, I know it sounds scary, but I suspect the direct impact on the economy is much smaller than it's being made out to be.
Right, Mr. Matthews. Now, just to expand on that, what you mentioned, sentiment, that's a big aspect here as well. We have seen, even in the run-up to this announcement, there were market jitters, there was nervousness among some experts and economists as well. Do you think this is going to lead to any sort of global supply chain disruptions?
I don't think so, no. I mean, there already has been a lot of shift in the supply chains over the last 5, 6, 7 years. That's already happened. And there are, I think, some items where they'll have to make exceptions again or negotiate very quickly. Food, for example. I mean, I didn't see food mentioned anywhere here, but the United States imports a lot of avocados, for example, or strawberries. They can't grow all of those fast enough to meet demand. So I can see certain supply chains that could be impacted, and there I think they'll have to be swift in finding loopholes or some way to bypass that.
All right, Ms. Matthews, thank you so much for joining us on WION World as One with your insights on this. It's always a pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you.